This is a reading from the 6th chapter of Luke. Give to everyone who asks you. And if anyone takes what belongs to you, do not demand it back. Do to others as you would have them do to you. If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good to those who are good to you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners do that. And if you lend to those from whom you expect repayment, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners, expecting to be repaid in full. But love your enemies, do good to them, and lend to them without expecting to get anything back. Then your reward will be great, and you will be children of the Most High, because he is kind to the ungrateful and wicked. Be merciful, just as your Father is merciful. Do not judge, and you will not be judged. Do not condemn, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together and running over, will be poured into your lap. For with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Last week, as we concluded our readings on Christmas, I suggested that the miracle of Christmas is not just that 2,000 and some years ago, God was born as a baby in Bethlehem, but that every day we have the opportunity and the potential to bear Christ in our hearts, for Christ to be born in us. And that happens, I think, when we participate in God's mercy. So I want to speak some more today about mercy as the mark of Christmas, but I'm going to take a very long, strange detour through the comics pages of the newspaper. Well, not really the newspaper. Now I read my comics on the internet. I read every day about 45 to 50 comics on an internet page called Go Comics, which is the comics page for what used to be called Creators Syndicate, which has most of the comics I always used to read in the newspapers. Peanuts, Calvin and Hobbes, For Better or For Worse. It doesn't have Blondie, which I think is King Syndicate, but it has an awful lot of the ones that I read, and then I discover new ones. One of the new ones that I've discovered that I'm very fond of is one called Agnes. It's kind of a modern day Charlie Brown with some major exceptions. Charlie Brown had two parents and lived in a middle-class suburb. Agnes lives with her grandmother in a trailer house in a trailer park called Paradise on Earth in Brown County, Ohio. It is very clear that Agnes and her grandmother are poor, but Agnes is indomitable. She has the most outrageous dreams for herself, which she has no clue what it requires to achieve. If the goal of the modern educational system is to produce people who can be productive workers, Agnes is a true misfit in that situation. She's constantly being sent to the principal's office for things like making up her own mathematics, which she will not fail. refusing to answer the question, giving a biology answer to a history question and such like. And yet the things she imagines for herself are spectacular. Because I read my comics on an internet site, every one of the comic strips has an opportunity for people to comment on it. In that way, it's somewhat like social media. And like social media, there are a range of comments ranging from the thoughtful to the bizarre and the violently political. And each comic strip seems to have its own strange set of commenters who comment regularly. There's one comic strip about cats in which the people who comment on that comic strip are all talking about their personal lives, and it almost never has anything to do with the cats in the comic strip. There's another comic strip where someone takes it over each day to make a comment that this is National French Bread Day and also National Shoelace Day, and just goes off with about a dozen or so, this is National whatever day. There's one comic strip, the comic strip Luann, where most of the commenters just rag on the cartoonists and talk about what a terrible job they're doing and how could they do this to such and such character, and it's, oh, they're terrible. They just insult those guys right and left. What's interesting about Agnes is that it's very clear from the comments that many of the readers cannot deal with Agnes's poverty. At least once a week, someone comments, is this supposed to be funny? I can't take this anymore. I'm leaving this comic strip. And on. Comments where people cannot deal with Agnes's situation. They think that Agnes's grandmother doesn't love her, when in fact Agnes's grandmother loves her very dearly. And some of these comments kind of came to a head in the week around Christmas. So the week starting Christmas, Agnes's grandmother woke her up in the middle of the night because there was a fire in their trailer. And they wind up at a cheap motel where the bed sheets are very stained, and Agnes's grandmother's very clear that she's really worried about bed bugs. They have nothing of what they had planned for Christmas that's left to them. And the whole strip is about what might happen for Christmas. I'm going to try to share my screen. But I can't do that yet. I don't know how well you will be able to see this, but I just wanted to show it to you, if you can. Okay, thanks, Wayne. So in the middle of this despair of this Christmas in a motel room, Agnes proudly shows her grandmother, see, I put up a Christmas tree. And her grandmother says, wonderful, where did you find it? And Agnes says, I made it from an old box. And her grandmother says, I would never have guessed. And you can see that Agnes has put a cardboard box on a stick. She's put a star on the top of the box, and she's put some paper cutouts on the box to stand in for Christmas bulbs. And then her friend Trout comes over and says, Christmas tomorrow, what's up with the box on a stick? And Agnes says, don't rub your craft skills in my face. And then I'll show you the next strip, which is the Christmas strip. And it's Christmas, and her grandmother is saying, well, Christmas is not as bad as I thought. And Agnes says, fast food tacos in a box on a stick. Her grandmother says, it's a Christmas tree to me. And Agnes says, thanks, Grandma. And her grandmother says, here's your present, 3 packets of hot sauce. And Agnes says, I got you little soap bars. And actually, this is the most wonderful Christmas resolution because her grandmother has given Agnes the gift of accepting this Christmas tree, which is just a cardboard box on a stick, but it is something that Agnes did out of love for her grandmother, and something that her grandmother has accepted out of love for Agnes and given her positive feedback, reinforcement for her imagination. This is a Christmas tree. It's not just a cardboard box on a stick. And this particular comic strip, this particular series, caused great consternation in the comments section of Agnes. One of the ones that Susie would be able to tell you caused me apoplexy were the comments from people suggesting that this would be a great time for Agnes's parents to step into the picture. And I'm thinking, where do you people live? A little girl who is staying with her grandmother does not have parents who are off on some fabulous vacation. They're not traveling for work. Her parents are not going to be able to step in here like fairy godmothers and godfathers and wave their wand and make everything better. What are you thinking? I think that in our part of the world, all of us in this room, so to speak, assume that if Agnes is living with her grandmother, either one or both of her parents are addicted to something, are in jail, are dead, or are otherwise discombobulated. There is no happy ending that's going to come about to this trailer park fire because her parents are going to miraculously arrive and save the day. But there was another comment that got people really upset. And this was one from someone who said in a rather sarcastic way that he felt that people would come forward and do something for them. And it is true that Agnes's grandmother goes to Mass every week and drags Agnes to Mass with her. Agnes constantly embarrasses herself in front of the priest, but they still go every week. And this commenter said, Grandma is a regular churchgoer and no doubt puts her widow's mite into the collection basket each week. She is one of the deserving poor that even Christians will help out without complaint. And there was a terrible kerfuffle in the comment section about what this even Christians comment meant. There were people who were saying, what do you mean even Christians? Christians are the most likely to help out. Christians are the one who do most of the charity. And then there were other equally as loud voices saying, but Christians don't live up to what they say they're going to do. And lots of times there are strings attached and there's lots and lots of judgment involved and so forth. And if I were a more aggressive comic strip commenter, as I am not, I would have said, I've been working within the church for over 20 years, and I know exactly what this commenter means when he says even Christians will help out Agnes and her grandmother. Because it's true of Christians like just about everyone else, that we put this string on our help, this codicil about what happens with the help. Most of the time, the ideal person that that we want to help is the motorist who had brand new tires in a brand new car and ran over a 6-inch spike at a construction site and just happened to have forgotten their billfold at home. And will be able to pay us back as soon as they get where they're going. Or a person who was walking through the woods and a freak thunderstorm came up out of nowhere and they were struck by lightning. People who have really bad luck, but not people who contributed to their misfortune. With people who have contributed to their misfortune, people who are unemployed, people who are alcoholics or addicts, people who are so angry that they can't hold a job, even the mentally ill who cannot perhaps control their anger, but still have behavioral issues that prevent them from getting along in society. With these folks, we want to make sure that the help that we give will not hurt. If someone comes up and asks us for $1 in downtown Cincinnati, we ask ourselves, are they going to go out and buy drugs with that? Are they going to go to a liquor store? And there's part of that impulse, which is judgment, and there's part of it, I think, which is well-intentioned. We don't want our help to do harm. And we consider that if we buy alcohol for an alcoholic or drugs for an addict, we would be contributing harm rather than help. Even though alcoholics and addicts both still need to eat, both still need food and shelter, we don't want to do anything that would deepen the addiction. And so we hesitate and we hedge our help. Which puts us really in direct conflict with the gospel reading from Luke. Give to everyone who asks you. Do not judge, and you will not be judged. Do not condemn, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and it will be given to you. For with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. There is definitely a conflict between those verses and our desire to do no harm with our help. So one of the things that in some way weights my answer to this conflict is another comic strip. My favorite comic strip of all time. Wayne, are you seeing Pogo here? Yes? Okay. This is from the early years of the comic strip Pogo. These two characters, Pogo and Porcupine, are my two favorite characters. And every Christmas Eve, somewhere between 2 and 4 in the morning, Pogo, who is the surly, grumpy, but ultimately full of love, Porcupine, comes over to Pogo's house, bringing him a flower that he saved from the spring. And so I also have to in the Pogo comic strip, the Okefenokee Swamp is a metaphor for life as we know it. And most of the characters bumble along and are quite confused and conflicted. But there are a few of them who are out to get one over on their fellow swamp residents. And among those are Wily Cat and Sarcophagus Macabre and Simple J. Malarkey. These are people who are, or characters who are actually set against the other residents of the swamp and people that anyone would be able to see that person is an enemy. This is the person who wants to get me alone somewhere and boil me in a soup pot. This is not someone who intends good for me. And so Pogo comes over and knocks on, Porcupine comes over and knocks on Pogo's door and says, "Awake, awake, 4 a.m., Christmas is at hand, and I brung you a flower I've been saving since early June. It ain't nothing to kiss my hand for, but," and Pogo says, "I've been waiting up for you. Grab a hold of these packages. We're going to sneak up on Wily Cats and Sarcophagus Macabres and old Simple J. Malarkey's hangout. Leave them outside the door and holler, 'Merry Christmas.'" And Porcupine says, "And after we hollers, then what?" Pogo says, "Naturally, we'll run." Porcupine trundles off with a package under his arm and says, "Well, I admit it's a highly embroidered little gesture, but do you think it'll do anybody any good?" Pogo says, "Oh, maybe just only us." And that really is the point of mercy in a way. The only way to judge mercy is that it does us good. When we participate in the acts of mercy, feeding the hungry, giving water to the thirsty, inviting the stranger inside, clothing the naked, visiting the imprisoned and the lonely. When we do those things, they make us become more the persons God created us to become. We are our better and our best of God's creations when we participate in the acts of mercy. We cannot measure them. We need to separate judgment from discernment. But the point of mercy is not so much what happens to those to whom we show mercy, but what happens to ourselves. You think it will do anyone any good? Maybe only us.